We're joined now by two men familiar with the tarnished presidency and missing White House evidence. Carl Bernstein, a CNN analyst and author of the memoir Chasing History, A Kid in the Newsroom, and Bob Woodward, who co-authored this remarkable piece for the Washington Post, who's also the co-author of Peril, about the transition from the former president to President Biden. So, Bob, this is really startling. I mean, this is not just a gap. This is a gaping hole in communications. What stood out to you?
Well, first of all, it's illegal to subvert a legitimate function of government, and the legitimate function here is the certification of the winner of the presidency, and the law specifies it will be on January 6th. And so here we find on that day, in many ways the most important day in Trump's presidency, that as we know, as I know personally, he's a chronic addictive phoner, and there's this 7-hour and 37-minute gap. It strains any credibility. And what happened? We have these 11 pages of White House records, which clearly establish and show what Trump was doing that day. As one of the lawmakers, Robert Costa and I talked to, said this is a cover-up. This has all of the elements of an organized concealment.
Bob, the other thing that, I mean, again, what's so remarkable about what you reported, the president gave the Washington Post a statement saying never heard of it, doesn't know what a burner phone is. And the statement says in part, and I just want to read it, it says, "I have no idea what a burner phone is. To the best of my knowledge, I have never even heard the term." John Bolton, in your article, said that he talked about burner phones often, or a number of times, didn't he?
Yes, and it's a classic way of concealing a conversation, and in this important way, and the law requires that the records of the presidential movements and phone calls be recorded. And the National Archives doesn't have this 7-hour and 37-minute gap. It's astonishing, and it is, Carl and I worked 50 years ago on Watergate, tangled, hidden, and this goes longer and based on the and deeper, and based on the information I have, I think the people who concocted this scheme of the alleged stolen election that there's no evidence on are next year going to win an Academy Award for the fabrication.
Carl, how does this happen? I mean, how does a phone log in the White House just have this gap in it? And because, as you know, as has been extensively reported, we know House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy, his phone call to the president, these should be in the records, but they aren't.
No, well, the way it happens is that people who are determined that we not know the truth about what happened leading up to this insurrection, an insurrection led by a seditious president of the United States. It's not in his interest for us to know, and the people around him presumably tried to make sure we don't know. We need to look at what happened on January 6th. This committee has already told us that a criminal act was committed by the President of the United States on January 6th. A judge has just said, a federal judge, that there is reason to believe that the President of the United States broke the law. What was this about? It was about a President of the United States, for the first time in our history, who would not allow his duly elected successor to take office. And in the process of that, what is sedition? It involves insurrection, promoting insurrection, such as occurred on January 6th. So we have something unique in the history of the presidency, way beyond the crimes of Richard Nixon. This is an unprecedented event to undermine the Constitution, to undermine democracy itself by a criminal president.
Bob, I mean, who would be involved in, is it just editing a log? I mean, do you know what would be involved in this kind of, I don't even know what to call it, this kind of, creating this kind of a gap?
Well, whoever turned it over officially, and in fairness, Trump says he just assumed all the proper records went to the archives, but whoever did this had no sense that they were handing in, if you will, homework that no one would believe. I just know personally, in dealing with Trump on 2020 on the phone, he would call in the morning, in the afternoon. He once called me in the afternoon and said, oh, or no, I'm sorry, I called him. I had some questions. And he said, I can't talk. I've got 20 generals waiting for me. And then we talked for 25 minutes. He could not stop talking. And so someone has done something that has underscored and put sparkles around a obvious deception. Who did it, how it was done, and to the credit of the January 6th committee, they're being expansive, they're talking to people, they're asking the old reporter's question, when you talk to somebody, who else should I talk to? And then they go talk to them and ask that. And they have got hundreds of witnesses. Let's hope they can put this together in a way so people will see what happened.
Carl, I mean, several members of the January 6th committee have expressed open frustration on Twitter and statements that the Department of Justice hasn't taken more action as a result of the committee's work thus far. Do you think the DOJ will ever prosecute Mark Meadows for contempt of Congress or seek to question the former president in some sort of criminal investigation?
Or perhaps prosecute the former president of the United States. Usually, or very often, prosecutors wait until they have a full record of investigations before they indict, before sometimes they impanel a grand jury. What we know is that the committee's information thus far, the Justice Department is aware of it. The committee's information is voluminous. It shows exactly up to what is known now how the President of the United States undermined his office, undermined the Constitution, and presumably the Justice Department is looking at every aspect of this, including how to go about indicting those involved in this conspiracy. Let's be clear, this is a conspiracy to defraud the United States and its people. It is a conspiracy, the top of which is undoubtedly, unquestionably, the former President of the United States. So it's understandable that the Justice Department might be taking its time in such a sensitive case to go forward. We don't know, but the Attorney General is certainly looking with his prosecutors at this.
Carl Bernstein, Bob Woodward, I appreciate it.
I think he
ahead, Bob.
actually has a responsibility to look at this. You just can't pretend this didn't happen.
Exactly.
Fascinating, Bob. As always, thank you so much. Carl as well.